March 24th, 1945, 4:18 a.m. Outside Wesel, Germany. Sergeant Caleb "Cal" Mercer is lying in a crater with his ears ringing and his mouth full of dirt. 30 seconds ago, he was inside a Waco glider, wood, canvas, and prayer, skimming the treetops toward the Rhine. Now, the glider is a splintered wreck behind him, burning in the dark like a campfire from hell. Cal's unit is scattered. The night is alive with tracer fire, and somewhere in the fog, Germans are shouting. Cal checks his weapon. His rifle is gone. He pats his pockets. A few loose rounds, a torn map, a pocket knife, and one object that suddenly matters more than anything else in Europe: a pair of wire cutters hanging from his belt. Because Cal Mercer isn't a rifleman. He's a mechanic who got drafted, learned how to keep engines alive, and then volunteered to ride into combat inside machines that can't land. And right now, in a war defined by fuel, steel, and speed, Cal can hear something through the fog. An engine. Not Allied. German. Low. Idling. Confident. Cal drags himself up, limps toward the sound, and reaches the edge of a hedgerow. On the other side is a small German motor pool, barely guarded, half asleep, tucked behind a ruined farmhouse. And parked in the open like it was placed there by fate is an Sd.Kfz 251 half-track, the German workhorse of the battlefield. Steel hull, bench seats, a mounted MG, an armored box on tracks that can carry a squad through gunfire. Caleb Mercer stares at it and feels his brain do what it always does under pressure. It stops panicking and starts calculating. He doesn't have a rifle. He doesn't have a radio. He doesn't know where his unit is, but he knows what the half-track is: a vehicle, a weapon, a door. And in the next 10 minutes, Caleb Mercer is going to do something no manual could prepare him for. He's going to steal a German half-track in the dark, drive it straight through enemy lines, and smash back into Allied territory while both sides try to kill whoever's inside. Not to save himself, to save the men who are still out there, bleeding in the fog. This is the story of the mechanic who turned a stolen engine into a lifeline. Time, place, object. March 24th, Wesel. Half-track. The boy who could fix anything. Caleb Mercer was born July 9, 1919, in Hutchinson, Kansas. Flat land, hard wind, and the kind of towns where nobody gives you a future. You build one. His father worked rail. His mother ran the house like a command post. Cal grew up with grease under his fingernails because machines were the only things in his world that made sense. Engines don't lie. They either run or they don't. And if they don't, it's because something real is broken. A cracked line, a clogged filter, a loose bolt. Fix the cause, the effect disappears. It's a simple logic, and it becomes Cal's religion. By 16, he can rebuild a tractor carburetor in the dark. By 19, he's the guy neighbors call when their truck dies in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't talk much, he listens. To people and to machines. Then the war comes. The draft letter arrives like a hammer. November 1941. Cal reports in, 22 years old, strong hands, quiet eyes. The Army looks at him and sees what it needs: a mechanic. A man who can keep trucks running, tanks moving, radios powered. They teach him the basics at a motor pool. How to diagnose a dead engine by smell. How to patch a line with whatever's in your kit. How to make a broken thing work long enough to win a day. Cal is good at it. Too good. Because he starts hearing the same sentence over and over. You're valuable back here. Let the infantry handle the front. And Cal Mercer, hates the idea of being useful but invisible. He wants to see the problem with his own eyes. So when the airborne recruiters come through, asking for volunteers for a new kind of insanity, Cal raises his hand, not because he wants glory, because he understands something most people don't. In war, mobility is life, and airborne units are the sharpest kind of mobility there is. They go where roads can't. They land where engines usually don't survive. They fight surrounded and hold until the rest of the army catches up. It sounds like suicide to most men. To Cal, it sounds like a machine that needs fixing.
Why he chose the glider. Paratroopers get the legend. Glider men get the bruises. A glider is a cargo box with wings. No engine, no second chance. You get towed in, you cut loose, and gravity decides the rest. It's silent on final approach. You don't hear the enemy until you're already landing in him. Gliders carry the things paratroopers don't. Jeep trailers, ammo, radios, medics, mortars. Sometimes entire squads. And the men inside them know one truth. If you survive the landing, you're already lucky. Cal becomes a glider infantryman attached to an airborne division headed for Europe. He learns how to sit strapped in while flak shakes the sky, how to jump out of a splintering cabin with a rifle and still find your unit in darkness, how to fight when the plan doesn't show up. He also becomes the guy everybody relies on when equipment fails. A mortar base plate cracks. Cal patches it. A radio battery dies. Cal improvises power. A Jeep throws a track. Cal gets it rolling. He's the quiet fix in the middle of loud violence. And by 1944, he's done enough to get promoted. Not because he's the loudest, because when things go wrong, he's still useful. That matters in war.
The night of the Rhine. By March 1945, Germany is collapsing. But collapsing doesn't mean harmless. It means cornered. The Allies are preparing to cross the last natural barrier before the heart of the Reich, the Rhine. The plan is bold and brutal. Bombard the far bank, send infantry over on boats, drop airborne troops behind the lines to seize roads and choke points. Cal's division is part of the airborne drop. They'll go in before sunrise in fog under anti-aircraft fire. And everyone knows what that means. There are only two kinds of glider landings, bad and worse. March 24, 1945, 4:18 a.m., outside Wesel. Cal's glider is coming in low when it catches fire from the side. Not a direct hit, just enough shrapnel to turn wood into kindling. The pilot tries to put it down fast. The ground comes up. The glider hits a ditch, cartwheels once, and explodes into pieces. Cal wakes up in mud and smoke. His head is ringing like a bell. He tries to stand and pain cuts through his ribs. Something's cracked, maybe two things. He looks for his weapon. Gone. He calls out. No answer. Fog swallows sound. Then he hears Germans nearby. Not a squad in a clean formation, a nervous bunch of men with flashlights and rifles, moving toward crash sites like scavengers. Cal crawls into a crater and thinks, no rifle, no radio, no unit. Germany all around. The safe option is simple. Hide until daylight, then surrender to the first German who looks like he believes in rules. But Cal has learned something about war. There is no safe option. There are only options. And the right option is usually the one that turns your weakness into someone else's problem. He hears it again. That engine, German, idling, close. And Cal Mercer makes the decision that will define the rest of his life. He moves toward the sound. The half-track. The motor pool is small, temporary, makeshift. A few tarps, a ruined farmhouse, 3 vehicles parked in a row. A light truck, a motorcycle, and the half-track. There are 2 German soldiers nearby, not alert, not expecting anything, Because who attacks a motor pool at 4:30 a.m. in fog without a rifle? Cal watches their routine. One man smokes, the other fiddles with a toolbox. They're tired, and tired men make predictable mistakes. Cal's wire cutters suddenly feel heavy, not because they're a weapon, because they are a promise. I can get inside. He crawls forward through wet grass until he's close enough to see the half-track's details. The front end is a truck, steering wheel, engine, headlights. The back end is tracks, traction, power, a way to chew through mud and shell holes. There's an MG mount on top. A German helmet sits on the bench seat like a joke. Cal Mercer has never driven this exact vehicle, but he's driven dozens like it. Engines speak a common language. So do gearboxes. He waits for the smokers to turn away. Then he moves. Fast, quiet, low. He reaches the half-track and climbs in like he belongs there. His hands find the ignition. He pauses, because this is the moment where the whole plan can die. If the starter grinds, if the engine coughs and stalls, if the Germans hear one wrong sound and look up, Cal will be shot in the driver's seat. He breathes once. Then he turns the key. The engine catches. It doesn't roar. It settles into a steady, throaty idle like it's been waiting for him. Cal feels something snap into place in his chest. Not courage, clarity. He shoves the gear into motion. The half-track lurches forward. The smoking soldier turns, confused. He raises a rifle. Cal doesn't slow. He drives straight at the gap between the farmhouse and a low stone wall. The half-track clips the wall. Stone explodes outward. The German shouts. A second later, the motor pool is behind him and the fog swallows everything. Cal Mercer is moving through enemy territory in a German vehicle, and now he has a new problem. He doesn't know where he is, but he knows where he needs to go. West. Toward the gunfire that sounds like America. The Fog Road. A half-track is loud. Not like a tank, but loud enough. You can't steal it and stay invisible. So Cal does what mechanics do. He reduces problems, one at a time. First problem, being recognized. He grabs the German helmet from the bench seat and puts it on. Not because he thinks he'll fool anyone up close, because at a distance, in fog, shape matters more than detail. Second problem, getting shot by Germans. He drives on back roads, hugging hedgerows. He avoids bridges and main routes where sentries will be awake. He passes 2 German infantrymen on the roadside. They glance at the vehicle and wave him through. They don't wave because they trust him. They wave because they're tired and they don't want to stop a half-track unless they have to. Third problem, finding allies. Cal looks for signs, not written signs, war signs. Distant artillery thumps, a glow on the horizon, the sound of machine guns that isn't German. He drives for 20 minutes, then 30. Fog turns the world into a white tunnel, and suddenly, headlights appear ahead. A German roadblock, 2 trucks, a handful of soldiers, a barrier made from a fallen tree. Cal sees them at the same time they see him. A voice shouts. The barrier doesn't move. Cal's mind goes quiet again. A mechanic's mind is good at this. When the obvious path is blocked, you don't argue with it. You find another path. He swerves off the road into a field. The half-track's tracks bite into mud. The Germans shout and raise weapons. Shots crack. Rounds ping off metal behind Cal. He feels the vehicle shudder once, twice, but it keeps going. The field is uneven, cratered by shell fire. The half-track bucks like a living animal. Cal grips the wheel with both hands and fights it through. The German roadblock vanishes behind him in fog. He's not dead, but now he's truly lost, and he's running out of something that matters in any machine: fuel. He checks the gauge. Low. Maybe 40 minutes left if he's lucky. In a normal situation, that would mean stop, hide, surrender. Cal does the opposite. He drives faster, because in war, speed is its own kind of armor. The men in the ditch.
10 minutes later, Cal sees movement in the fog. Not a vehicle. People. Shapes in a ditch beside the road, waving frantically. Cal slows, and his heart tightens. American uniforms. 4 men. 2 are standing. 1 is kneeling. 1 is lying flat, not moving. They look like survivors from a crash, or a patrol that got cut off. Cal brings the half-track to a stop and leans out. "Get in," he hisses. They stare at him like he's a ghost, because they're looking at a German half-track, German helmet, German markings, and a man inside they can't identify in the fog. One of them raises a rifle. Cal rips the helmet off and throws it aside. "I'm American. Move." That sentence, American words, breaks the spell. They scramble into the back, dragging the wounded man. Cal sees blood on a sleeve, a leg wrapped in a belt like a tourniquet. One of the men is shaking from cold and fear, not injury. "Where's your unit?" Cal asks. The man laughs once, short, bitter. "Gone." That's all he says. Cal nods, because gone is a normal answer in airborne operations. He slams the half-track into gear. Now he isn't just escaping, he's carrying lives, and that changes the math. Friendly fire.
Cal finally finds the front, not by maps, by the sound. The artillery becomes constant. The fog glows with muzzle flashes. The ground trembles. Then he sees it. An American position. Sandbags, foxholes, a line of men in helmets with rifles pointed outward. Cal's chest loosens. Then his stomach drops, because the moment the half-track emerges from fog, the Americans do exactly what they should do. They open fire. A German vehicle charging toward your line in a foggy dawn is not a mystery, it's a threat. Rounds snap past the windshield. Metal rings as bullets hit the half-track's hull. One of the men in the back screams. Cal leans on the horn. He waves his bare arm out the window. He yells until his throat burns. "Don't shoot! American! American!" But gunfire doesn't stop for yelling. Gunfire stops for certainty, and certainty takes time. Cal drives straight at the line anyway, slowing just enough not to run over the sandbags. The half-track rolls to a stop 10 yards from the nearest foxhole. Rifles are trained on him. A lieutenant steps forward, pistol drawn. "Hands up," he shouts. Cal puts both hands up. Then he points into the back. "Wounded, American." The lieutenant hesitates. Then he climbs onto the side and looks in. 4 Americans stare him back. 1 bleeding, 1 pale, 1 holding a German rifle like it's the only thing keeping him alive. The lieutenant's expression changes instantly, from threat to disbelief. "What the hell is this?" he says. Cal exhales, and for the first time in hours, he hears his own voice as something human. "A ride," he says. "A ride you needed." The maps. When the wounded are pulled out, Cal finally notices what's on the front bench seat beside him. A leather satchel. He didn't see it when he climbed in. He didn't have time. Now he opens it and finds the real prize. Not money, not medals. Maps. German maps, marked with pencil lines. Roadblocks, patrol routes, reserve positions. A whole picture of how the Germans intend to respond to the Rhine crossing. Cal hands them to the lieutenant, and the lieutenant's face goes serious. This isn't just a stolen vehicle. This is intelligence. A warning. A way to save men who would otherwise walk into an ambush in fog. Within minutes, officers are gathered around the maps. Orders shift. A company reroutes. A patrol gets pulled back before it enters a kill zone. The half-track, Cal's insane decision, has already paid for itself. And Cal Mercer sits on the bumper of a German vehicle in an American trench line, hands shaking as the adrenaline drains. Not from fear, from the sudden, crushing realization that he could have died a dozen times and never even been identified. He looks at the wire cutters still hanging from his belt. A tool, a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the smallest object becomes the hinge of history. What happened next? By afternoon, the fog lifts. The front moves forward. Cal is told he can rest, that he's dumb enough, that someone else can take over. Cal Mercer nods politely. Then he stands up, because now he has another problem in front of him. The half-track is damaged. Bullet dents, a cracked headlight, a leaking line under the hood. A vehicle that carried men through gunfire is now bleeding itself out. Cal crawls under it like he's back in Kansas under a truck. He uses his wire cutters to strip a line. He wraps a torn cloth around the leak and clamps it down with a piece of scavenged metal. It isn't pretty. It doesn't need to be. It needs to last one more day. Because war doesn't reward perfect. War rewards functional. That evening, Cal drives the half-track again, this time with an American escort, using it to pull wounded men out of a shell-swept ditch that ambulances can't reach. In the dark, you hear the same sound again. An engine. Not German now. A stolen engine, made honest by what it carries. And somewhere in the ruins, men who would have died in a field hear that engine coming and realize they might get another sunrise. After the war. The war ends. Germany falls. The Rhine becomes a river again, instead of a line of death. Caleb Mercer goes home. He doesn't write a book. He doesn't sell the story. He doesn't become a public speaker. He opens a small garage outside Hutchinson and spends the next 30 years doing what he did best, fixing things that other people give up on. Engines, generators, farm trucks, old tractors that should be dead, but keep living because Cal won't accept dead as an answer without checking the cause. Sometimes men ask him about the war, about the half-track, about how it felt to drive a German vehicle into American gunfire. Cal shrugs the way mechanics shrug when someone praises them for doing their job. "It ran," he says. "That's all I needed." The point. There are two ways to tell stories like this. The first way is the legend. A glider sergeant shot down in fog who steals an enemy half-track, smashes through roadblocks, survives friendly fire, and brings back wounded men and German maps like he's some kind of one-man cavalry. The second way is the real lesson. War isn't won only by the strongest, or the loudest, or the bravest in the traditional sense. War is won by people who can still think when fear tries to shut their brain off. Cal Mercer didn't have a rifle on March 24th. He had wire cutters. He had mechanical sense. He had the ability to look at a machine and see a solution instead of a symbol. He saw a German half-track and didn't see enemy. He saw mobility. He saw cover. He saw a way out. And once he was moving, everything else became a series of problems with answers. Roadblock, field. No unit, find survivors. Friendly fire, prove it. Leaking line, patch it. That's what courage often looks like in real life. Not shouting, not speeches, just problem-solving at the edge of death. Time, place, object. March 24th, Wesel, half-track, and one mechanic in the fog who refused to stop moving.